Could you run even better if you had even better biomechanics? And it seems like the answer would be an obvious yes, but there's a catch to this. Your best biomechanics, your most efficient biomechanics, are the mechanics that you use when you don't try to change anything. So if you try to change your biomechanics to make them better, ironically, you get less efficient. Now, why would that be? It's simply because you're doing something that is less ingrained in your body. If you ran with a really horrible efficiency and you're flopping around everywhere, it actually is the best way for you to run if you were to race right now. But if you were to race 6 months from now or 12 months from now, then changing those biomechanics in the long term would make you more efficient in the long term. If you decide that you want to, then the main thing that you want to do is you want to practice it in training. And when you get close to your race, you just let it go. You don't worry about it. You don't think about it. And on race day, you don't think about it whatsoever at all. You just self-select. This is a little bit of a catch because if you look at, there was a study that was done, I believe it was at the 2000 Olympics, the Sydney Olympics. They looked at runners who were running the 10,000 meters, and they looked at them in world championships and other races as well. But at the Olympics, because we're looking at the best in the world, what was looked at was their stride rate and their stride length. Now, how fast you go is the product of those two things. How quickly you move your feet times how long the stride is. So you can change the stride length, you can change the stride frequency, and nothing else is gonna change how fast you run. And what was found was that it wasn't ubiquitous. Runners who started with a higher stride rate, but a smaller stride, when they got fatigued at the end of the race, they had a lower stride rate and a bigger stride. And vice versa. Those runners who had a bigger stride but a lower stride rate at the beginning, at the end of the race, they had a higher stride rate with a shorter stride. Now, it changed because if you do the exact same motion again and again and again, you'll get fatigued. And so you want to allow your body to these runners, I don't think that they were consciously thinking this. It's just when your body starts to get fatigued, you'll start to change how you load your muscles because you're fatigued by doing it one way. So if we change it slightly, you're a little bit more fresh, even if it's a little bit less efficient. So even within a race, there's no such thing as proper biomechanics. As you get fatigued, your body is smart. Your body wants to keep you going with the least amount of effort possible. And so it will change the way that you recruit your muscle fibers, how many motor units you recruit, and your stride length and your stride rate. It will change for you. But in your training, you do want to give yourself a fighting chance. So I'm going to give you 3 things. And these are the ways and the reasons and the end effects of changing your biomechanics. Okay, the first one is the most in-depth, so we'll spend most of our time there, then we'll go boom, boom, number 2 and 3. I'll tell you what they are right off the front. Okay, the first one is that essentially we want to be improving your ground reaction forces. That's kind of the name of the game when it comes to improving your efficiency. Number 2 is we want to improve your efficiency at race pace. And so improving efficiency for you, a marathoner, would not be the same as improving efficiency for a sprinter or a middle distance runner. We want to work on different things. So that's number 2. And number 3 is we want to improve your efficiency, not just neuromuscularly, but metabolically. So 1, 2, 3, let's go through them. Number 1, there is a misconception, and I do have a YouTube video on this, that you should be landing on your midfoot. Now, this is a hot topic because if you land on your midfoot, it means that you're landing probably underneath your center of mass. If you land on your heel, go ahead and try to land on your heel, but land underneath you. Now you could do a test. You could jump up and down like a jump rope or something like that. And you could try to land on your heel. But not only is it gonna be painful and jarring, you can't really land on your heel when you're underneath your center of mass. By definition, if you land on your heel, you're in front of your center of mass. So if I'm running this direction, my heel would be in front of me in order to land on it, right? The further out your foot is in front of you, the more likely you are to land on your heel. Likewise, you can't land on a flat foot. You can't do that if your foot is out in front of you. So by definition, landing on your heel means that you're in front of your center of mass. So we're told, and it does make sense, that if you want to conserve momentum and you want to land under your center of mass, which is really important, that you want to be landing midfoot or on your forefoot. When you land on your forefoot, you got all this nice bounce in your Achilles tendon. I've got other videos and trainings on that, so I'm gonna go kind of quickly through that. But what I wanna share with you is that elite runners, do they land on their midfoot or do they land on their heel? And the answer is both. But you can actually see a lot of really great marathoners who are running, 2 hours, 5 minutes, certainly under 2 hours, 10 minutes, and you see them landing on their heel. You can actually see it en route to a sub 2:10 marathon. Now, Isn't that weird? If they're landing on their heel, doesn't that mean they have a braking force? And the answer is no, it's an illusion. Because just because their heel touches the ground doesn't mean that they're putting weight into that heel. So what they do is they let their foot touch the ground, perhaps on their heel, and then they simply fall forward and they don't contract the muscles until their foot is under their center of mass. And then they release and they move forward. And then once again, land on their heel. But if you look at their quad muscles, when their heel touches the ground, an elite runner, if their heel touches the ground and you look at their quad muscles, they're not contracted. And you can see their muscles contract once their foot gets underneath them. Now the muscles are engaged and then they release. But if you look at an amateur runner, a low mileage runner, an overweight runner, a beginning runner, if you see them land on their heel and you were to look at their quad muscles, if they had, runner's short shorts on, and when you look at it on a treadmill or something like that, you'll see that their quads are contracting when their heel touches the ground. So that is what we want to avoid. So when we're talking about efficiency here, we've just kind of touched on heel strike versus forefoot strike. Forefoot strike is the way to go, probably, but I want you to understand that if you land on your heel, it's not the end of the world as long as you don't weight your foot under the heel. Now, you almost never want to weight your foot under the heel unless you're really fatigued. So perhaps at the end of a marathon, you might be pretty fatigued and you need to land on your heel. And the reasons for this, again, I have full-length videos on this, but essentially you need more time on the ground to generate force because you're tired. You can't pop off the ground. So I'm seeding the idea here for you. Popping off the ground is really the name of the game. If you're landing on your heel because you're fatigued, it means you need more time on the ground to put force into the ground because your muscles aren't able to produce force quickly. But if you could produce force quickly, then your foot would be on the ground for a short period of time, like hot coals. And by definition, your foot would have to be under your center of mass because if your foot is out in front of you, you can't pop it off the ground. You'd be pushing yourself backwards, right? So to quickly get off the ground, quick, your foot has to be underneath you. And that is what we want, however you achieve it. So we talked about heel strike and forefoot strike. And the reason you want to be weighting underneath you is for conservation of momentum. Let's see if I can animate this here, just kind of with my hand. If you land, so here's a runner, and we're leaning this way to run. If you land out in front of you, you're braking yourself. If you land underneath you, you can just continue to fall forward and you conserve your momentum. And if you land behind you, well, you're probably gonna fall over on your face. So don't do that. You have to land in front of you or because you're actually moving forward ever so slightly in front of your center of mass. All right? Now, the idea of wasted motion is really what we're talking about here. When you change your biomechanics, what we're trying to do is eliminate accessory motion. And I want you to understand that accessory motion in your running can happen from literally the most obvious thing, like flailing your arms around or something like that and bobbing your head side to side. This would not be efficient. We can probably all agree on that. But you have very small motions, the way that you contract all the muscles in your leg, your knee extension, your hip flexion, what's going on in your foot, all of these small motions, this is how we refine and refine and refine even more. And we're trying to make that efficient. So the actual motion at your joints, we're trying to make more efficient. That's why we change biomechanics. But second is that there's not just wasted gross motion, we don't want to waste motion at the metabolic level, at the tissue level, at the cellular level. We want to be able to be efficient there. We're gonna come back to that, that's number 3, okay? But I want you to sort of hear this. And so here are some takeaways for you for point number 1. I want you to focus on your stride frequency, your stride rate. Now you've heard about 180 strides per minute, and I do have videos on 180 strides per minute as well. You can go in depth there, but I'll tell you that it is unlikely that if you're under 180 strides per minute, that you're maximizing your efficiency. Now, there are exceptions to this, especially in ultra running, where you may want to have a bigger, lopier stride in order to preserve your muscle power and just spend more time on the ground. But, if you're a marathon runner or a middle distance runner, you do want to have a stride rate that is at least 180 steps per minute. Now, it's not really a problem. If you're over 170, you're in the ballpark. If you're at 175, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You're pretty close. You want to move towards 180 if you can, but you don't have to stop at 180. So the research on stride mechanics, I believe this was done at the Atlanta Olympics. I believe it was Jack Daniels who did this at the Atlanta Olympics. It might have been Barcelona, but looking at the stride rates of every runner across the 100 meters to the marathon. And what they found was that stride rate wasn't 180 steps per minute. It was at least 180 steps per minute. In the 1500 meters, it was about, it was a little over, I forget exactly, but like 180 to 190. And in the marathon, in the 5K, 10K, and the marathon, it was about 180. But in the shorter distances, in the 1500 meter and the 800 meter and in the sprints, it goes up to 200 or higher, 210. And in like the 100 meter, it's just like as fast can be. So you want to be at least 180 steps per minute, provided that you're well trained. So again, if you're at like 175, don't fret about it. Just keep on doing what you're doing. It'll improve over time as you increase your volume. But if you're under 172 or so, and if you're in the 160s, you probably want to get that up. Now, how do you get it up? That's what we're going to talk about here. You want to, now here's the point, okay? I said 3 points. The first one, the point is that you want to improve your ground reaction force. So a ground reaction force is, if you were to run over a force plate, so we put this thing on the ground and you run and then you run over it, we can measure how quickly you put force into the ground. And some runners will put force into the ground gradually, and their toe will lift up off the ground and it'll drop off. But if you look at better and better runners, faster and faster runners, when they touch the force plate, the peak force will go straight up and then it'll come straight down. They put all of the force required in order to maintain speed into the ground as quickly as possible. That's what we want to maximize. And as far as I know, one of, if not the greatest, but one of the highest ever measured is none other than Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt gets off of the ground so quickly that his foot is literally touching the ground for less time than essentially any other runner. He's got really quick feet. He's also the fastest human being of all time. So the shorter the time you are on the ground, the faster you will run. Now, why is that? Your muscles are contracting when they are in contact with the ground. You gotta support your body weight, but when you're off of the ground, your muscles aren't really contracting. You're flying through the air. It's kind of free motion. Now, of course, you're gonna be swinging your leg a little bit. It's mostly a reaction force though, a stretch reflex. You're essentially not expending energy the more time you are in the air. So you wanna minimize time on the ground, maximize time in flight. And this doesn't happen because you consciously jump higher. Don't do that. It comes because you spend less time on the ground because your muscles are powerful. When you do that, you will become significantly more efficient because you spend whatever, 80% or 90% of your stride floating through the air, as opposed to only, I don't know, 60 or 70% of your stride floating through the air. You take all that time where you're contracting muscles and you reduce it. And therefore, it's easier. That's the main reason. Now, how do you improve your ground reaction forces? There's really one way. You got to improve your power. But how do you improve your power? Okay, if you can find a way to just improve your power, go ahead and do it. But I'm going to tell you the formula. When it comes to improving power, you want to have a prerequisite that is improve your strength, and then you improve how quickly you recruit that strength, in that order. So just improving power for you might be doing jump ropes or any kind of plyometric exercise like a bound or a skip or a jump or something like that. And you can do that, but you'll do that better with less injury risk if you spend some time strengthening first. So this is where the weight room comes in. If you build up strength, you can then convert that later to power by increasing the rate that you contract your muscles, okay? So take home point number one, and actually I'm gonna give you a couple of examples here. Here's the best. Bill Rogers, great marathoner. He said when he is in his off season, he's bouncy, he can run a fast 5K, he feels nice and light. But he also said when he's in his best marathon shape, he feels like he can barely even leave the ground. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because I just said the quicker your ground reaction force, the faster you will go. Yeah, but he's running a marathon. So if he were to use all his power and really like punch it into the ground and have a really quick rebound off the ground for a marathon, he's probably gonna get more fatigued. It takes more power and you're using different metabolic systems to do that. So for the longer your race goes, the less important this is. It still is true that the shorter you're on the ground, the better, but you don't need to get to a sprinter's status of being quick off the ground if you're a marathoner. So that really quick ground reaction force is more advantageous the faster you go, which probably means the shorter the distance you race, the more important it is. Point number two is that you want to be efficient at race pace. right? Usain Bolt, very efficient at sprinting. Bill Rogers, very efficient at marathon because they train relevantly for their race that they run. So what is the race that you want to run? What is the race that you care about? And you want to have your ground reaction force be in line with the race that you're doing. And so the way you train that is become efficient at race pace. This is why you do things like marathon pace. And most training programs out there, even Jack Daniels' training program, right? He's a great coach, and his programs, he has you do all kinds of different things. But if you're a marathon runner, he has you do marathon pace runs. Why? Because that's the best way to improve efficiency at marathon pace. So how do I tell you to do this? I tell you to do that in your specific phase. That's what the specific phase is. You build base training with building up your aerobic integrity and building up your neuromuscular integrity. Then you do a support phase that kind of brings those two ends together and makes them, you still elevate them, but closer to your race pace. And then your specific phase, about 6 weeks out from your race, you want to be doing stuff that's pretty close to your race pace, whatever that is. Pretty close, a little bit slower but longer, and a little bit faster but shorter. Pretty close to it, and sometimes exactly at race pace. Okay, and the reason you don't do this from the beginning of your training is because if you were to go out and run marathon goal race pace now, you could only do a certain amount of volume of it. But if you build up the foundations first, in your specific phase, when you go to do these really effective workouts, if you're a 800-meter runner, you probably want to really maximize your anaerobic system. And so that's gonna be a different metabolic pathway that your body uses to train. So you better be training anaerobically a lot of the time, because you need it for race day. But if you're a marathon runner, do you need to do as much anaerobic training? Of course not, because your race is almost exclusively aerobic. So we need to maximize the aerobic system and we need to get efficient there. So if you get efficient with your aerobic system, you may, let's see, build up more mitochondria. That's a good one. You may improve your VO2 max. That's a good one. You may improve also neuromuscular efficiency. Yeah, you improve a lot of things, but you can see how metabolic systems really matter. Now, an 800-meter runner doesn't need to burn fat at all. In fact, they don't want to. They want to burn sugar all day, baby. They're using the ATP phosphocreatine system and the anaerobic system. That's it. Their aerobic system simply allows them to recover from training bouts, but in the race, it's anaerobic. So they need to train different things. They need to train, things like lactate threshold. That's not even the most important. They need to train how to buffer hydrogen ions out of their blood, how to dissipate heat from local muscular temperature. They need to train themselves to burn glycogen and maximize the reuptake of ATP in their ATP phosphocreatine system, etc. So to recap, the entire thing is if you want to improve your efficiency, do it in your training, and you do exercises in training, not in your race. And the exercises you want to do are geared at improving your ground reaction force, and that is done through power training, which is done through strength training and then converting that into power. Number 2 is that you want to improve efficiency at race pace, and you do that through running at or near race pace, both slightly faster than and slightly slower than and exactly at race pace. But you don't do that until you hit your specific phase of training so that you can do it at a higher level. And number 3 is you want to improve your efficiency, you want to improve your metabolic efficiency, and that is going to be dependent on the race distance that you're doing, but it really depends on the duration of time that you're out there. You can get a copy of Run Elite, Train and Think Like the Greatest Runners of All Time. It is doing very well right now. Thank you to you who have purchased the book. Thank you for the reviews that you've left. It's truly been a pleasure serving you. I'll see you on the next video. This has been Andrew Snow with Run Elite. Goodbye.